Welcome back to another episode of the Canon on the Boom Bust channel. I'm your host Terry, and today we're talking about the Acolyte. It has wrapped up. It is done, and it's it's interesting because we all know the algorithm and echo chambers and all that. So I think it was mixed throughout the whole time. I don't truly know what the opinion was, but it felt from what I was getting online that it was very negative, and then it swung to more positive towards the end, to where everyone was flaming it, and then a few people was like, oh my god, it's not that bad, to most people are like, hey, yeah, this is decent, could have been better, and you got the few people like, oh my god, how could you like this? So that's kind of what I've been feeling, but I think it's been mid-tier kind of the whole time. And I said from the beginning that I was going to let it play out because the show was obviously written as a mystery, so I'm gonna let it play out, but the execution so far still isn't good. Despite whatever the story is, that's not good. So like I said, the complaints about any quote unquote woke stuff, that whatever, and then the complaints about like decisions that we didn't even know yet, that's where I couldn't get on board with that, because I was like, we don't know what the actual story is to determine what was a bad choice and what didn't make sense. So now that we got it all, we can fully evaluate it. And I think for me, the show didn't necessarily suffer because of the story. And again, I know that was the big complaint the whole season, but now that I've seen it all, I don't think that was the big issue. The big issue, which a lot of people have pointed out, was the editing. And for me, it felt like a movie that was asked to be stretched into a series, and that caused the editing to be a little weird. And to be honest, not even the editing within the episode, but the sequence of the episodes too, I think a lot of people might feel are out of whack. And of course we'll get a fan edit, and I've never watched one of those, but I'm sure it's probably good, because in hindsight you could go back and switch it around. But in general, it just felt like, number one, it never felt like this was an actual mystery. And I really don't know, actually. So this is me just throwing this out there. I don't know that they pitched it that way as the creators. Now, Disney or Lucasfilm might have decided to market it that way, but I don't know if this was originally written to be a quote-unquote mystery, because if it was, either it was just a bad job or some interference happened to the point where they completely changed the story around, because I don't think the story's bad. The concept they kind of went with is one that you see not super often, but often enough, where it's a zig or zag type story. I want to show basically the famous Joker quote, one bad day. I want to show that when one character zigs instead of zags, how absolutely different the outcomes can turn out. And so they just showed that from a bunch of people's perspective, and I think it's a high concept. It's definitely like, yeah, it's just more high concept. I won't even say quality. It's more high concept writing. But just because you choose something that's high concept doesn't mean you write with high quality. And so I don't think the execution of certain scenes were, whether it was the acting, especially with the children, some of the delivery, to be honest, as good as Soul was, and I don't know the actor's name, as good as he was for learning English and all that, there were certain beats that I felt he delivered kind of weird when it really was supposed to be, you know, an emotional punch. It felt kind of weird. So the execution of everything to me was the big downfall. This most definitely easily could have been a movie. They definitely shouldn't have pitched it as a mystery, and they shouldn't have treated it as a mystery. Like I said, the way that they edited, the way that they sequenced the episodes, it kept trying to build up to, oh my God, what happened? What did these Jedi do? What happened that night? And it's not, again, in itself a bad story, but when you center around it, that became the problem, because the real story here was about the Jedi setting up for their downfall. Now, that in terms of like the bigger picture, that's what disappoints me, because we say 100 years before, specifically, not just so we could see the High Republic in live action, but also so we could separate, or at least that's what a lot of us thought, and I'll speak for me. I thought that 100 years meant we're going to separate from the stories that we already know and dig into some new stuff. And we went right back to where we always been. But that's not even necessarily the show's fault. It's the fans. Like, the fans are the reason I felt that way. Like, into this episode where they showed Yoda, they showed Plagueis, and they showed all this setup for how it connects to the story we know. And before that, they weren't even doing a lot of that. It was the fans that were in the comments, this changes that, and this isn't supposed to happen, and Anakin was supposed to be the only one, and they better not say that the Sith were there. How did they not know the Sith were there? And so, look, and I get it. Trust me, I get it. But at the same time, two things. Number one, at the same time, it's happened a lot in other IPs. Like, especially when you talk about anything with Fox. Now, of course, people will try to say Fox is terrible, but they put out absolutely great movies. But with Fox, with their X-Men, a lot of that. Even some stuff in the MCU don't line up. And so, as far as people not paying attention to canon correctly, that happens. But people were acting like this was like going to absolutely change the fabric of reality. And I mean, like, at the end of the day, let's be smart individuals. This is entertainment. This is something people wrote after the fact. Like, this ain't real life. This ain't a history book. Like, yes, some people might say, yeah, it'll be more dramatic if we did it this way, and we're going to skip on the canon a little bit. It happens. But people were so worried about that it just made me feel like everything else I watch, where it's all about how this connects. How does this line up? The same thing with the Obi-Wan. The whole discussion. Well, they only fall. They said the last time they fall, I was the student of the master, and so they can't fight this because that's all they want to talk about. And it's just like, I'm so sick of everything connecting back to the original trilogy. I really am. Like, not a big fan of the sequels. Obviously, nothing against the original trilogy, but I can't even enjoy any of it because all people want to do is try to poke a hole or of why this changes something that they already know about Star Wars. And so I'm very fine with the idea of going way back before, but then the thing is, you got Yoda's this old, so he should be blah blah, and Chewbacca is this old, so he should be alive around it. And it's just like, oh my God. Go way in the future and get away from, I mean, what was it, like 40 years between Star Wars, something like that? I don't know. But they had all this time in separation just to redo it again. Now we know, obviously, that's what Disney's plan was. They wanted to just redo, play the great hits again and give us the exact same thing with different characters. So that was an unfortunate route, and I just feel like they do that all the time. And so between the fans and this episode, it's like, can we just get away? I don't care how Yoda impacts this story. I don't care how this impacts Anakin. I don't care how this impacts Luke. I don't care about none of that anymore. Let's move past and expand the universe. One of the many reasons I absolutely love Andor. We know Andor is, well, whether you like it or not, critically, it is recognized as elite level TV. And one of the many reasons why I love it, and I've said before, is that it takes the world and finds a story that plays within the world accurately, but it also enhances the world. It achieved two things that are hard to do. And I feel like the rest of these shows are just they're trying to coast off the clout of the world. Hey, this is in Star Wars, and when they can't really do anything original, well, this connects back to this, and now we could hook them in because we said something that connects to characters they know. And I'm so happy. I'm so happy because I mean, people in Andor was like, Vader's going to show up. Vader's got to show up, and I was just so happy they didn't do that. They mentioned Palpatine, but like he didn't show up. I'm just so happy that Andor was able to be brave enough to do that, and because they had something to talk about, and none of these shows feel like they do. And like I said, Acolyte was very much a zig or zag. It was like, let's explore what happens where the gray line can, in perception, can really change the course of history. And, cool. That's something they went for, but didn't execute well. Now, I did want to say, I actually only came here to say, I was right. Mostly, I would say I was mostly right. And of course, by this time, a bunch of people have said that they're going to end up switching places. But remember, I called it after the first episode. So I was right in terms of, I was like, the way they setting this up seems like they're going to end up switching places by the end of this. Now, the way they did it, I was a little bit wrong. Like Osha, I was exactly right. Like once, I mean, they really waited to the last second for her to find out the truth, but I thought she was just going to learn slowly that the Jedi don't always do what, they tell you they do, or what they say might not be exactly as it seems. And either way, she found out a critical piece of information and snapped. And that's kind of what I saw. Now, with May, I thought being with Soul and being around him would make her understand their perspective a little better, and maybe feel like it's too, because she already felt it was too extreme to kill him, even though she did flip-flop. Now that people could rip that, because again, I said we gotta wait and see. They did not give any good reason for that. She flip-flopped like 3 times for no reason. So, but anyway, so I thought she might be like, it's too extreme to kill him, and okay, let me pretend to be Osha. Oh, I'm learning more about it. Okay, maybe my perspective was way too skewed one way. But no, they never gave Soul that out. They gave, I don't be knowing names like that. They gave Trinity that out, but they didn't give Soul that out at all. Not only did he continue to to show May why she don't like him, but then he doubled, tripled, quadrupled down this whole last episode. Every time, I was right. And some people probably gonna complain that it was rushed. We didn't really feel like we knew why Soul was this way. And from the beginning, he was extremely thirsty over Osha. And I don't think they did a good job of explaining that. And he was about to say I love you before she killed him. It felt weird. I'm not going to lie to you. And I'm not typically one person to do that type of stuff. But that felt weird. I'm sure that's not what the show was trying to say. But it felt weird. Like, I know people were obsessed with the convergence. But he made it clear he was obsessed with Osha. And I don't really know why. But either way, they never put May in a position to be like, yeah, I might go the other way. May only really got to a point to say, wow, well, I'm not strong enough like you are, so you go ahead and do it. And they dropped the ball a little bit with that. They dropped the ball. I get it. Rule of two, the Sith, blah, blah, blah. And maybe because, May had already a relationship with I'm just calling Manny. She had a relationship with him and it didn't work out. He tried to kill her. So maybe she couldn't go back, but logically there was no reason why they both couldn't go with him. They both want the same thing at this point. So and they the same person. Like, technically they the same person. Why wouldn't you take both of them, continue to train, and try to continue to find a way to merge them back? Like, that's the move. Not erase her memory and leave her there. Obviously they're setting it up so she could get reprogrammed by the Jedi. So technically I was right, I guess. They totally switched spots. But again, the way they did it with May is not what I expected. They didn't give Sola out. They didn't give her a change of heart. It's going to be a memory wipe that kind of sets them up. But you knew the Jedi was going to catch her. It just that part didn't make sense. So, like I said, we're at the end of it, so we could point out all the stuff that didn't make sense. But they answered a lot of questions that people complained about. Did people like the answers? I'm sure not most people. But they did give us some answers that some people complained about. So all in all, I love that they pushed against the facade of the Jedi. And I've heard people that I respect, like legit content makers, sit and cry that the Jedi aren't cool and they're making them look bad. Like, what? Same thing like I said with Andor. Show us a different side. Amplify the lore. And I can honestly say Acolyte, in that sense, amplified the lore for me. Because, yes, everything was the Jet. Now, they mentioned they had hubris and blah, blah, blah. But honestly, in the prequels, I never felt it. Because, like, right away, we was in the crap. They didn't see it coming, but we was in the crap. And so this was refreshing to see a Jedi infrastructure that truly was arrogant, and that you have Jedis that don't all make the right decisions, and you saw temptation and how that could trap somebody. You saw justification and how somebody could rationalize what they want. And so and I love the introduction of the dark side in a different light. Oh yeah, we're evil. No, it was just like, no, you can access the Force with emotions. You can actually do some powerful stuff with that. And so the Jedi try to tell you do it one way, but there's other ways to do it. Like, y'all was witches, y'all know there's other ways to do it. And so I like that approach, because that seems more tempting than, yeah, we're evil. So I liked it in that sense, but yeah, the execution overall was just bad. So that's it for me. Go down in the comment section, let me know what you think. I do think, by the way, they're gonna get a season 2. I think they left enough low-hanging fruit to get people to be like, I want to know what's gonna happen. And this show has some fans. It does, despite what people want to say. So I do think they'll get a season 2. I don't think it's a lock, but I think they'll get a season 2. But do you? Go to the comment section, let me know. Share it around, get the conversation started. Thumbs up, subscribe, and remember, if you heard it here, it's official canon.